The second word of advice I want to give you is to individualize the ceremony. The worst thing that can happen is for a ceremony to come across as blah, 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 blah. I now pronounce you husband and wife. Um, what really makes the wedding ministers distinctive and what gets us great reviews and what really makes brides and grooms love our ministers is the fact that we have a plan and an intention to make this ceremony personal and meaningful to each bride and groom. So let me give you some tips on how we do that. One thing is we have the couples fill out a wedding couple profile. It's a two-page document that gives you their contact information, but also tells you things such as how they met, how they fell in love, how they got engaged, what they admire about each other, what their best characteristics are. These are some of the things you'll talk to them about when you meet them, but also having it in writing is very helpful. Um, when you are writing your wedding ceremony, what I encourage you to do is during the welcome of your wedding ceremony to take the story of how they met and to include that in your welcome, direct it to them, and you can see a wedding sample here where you can see how I've done that. The other thing is to take their what they admire the most about each other and incorporate that into the wedding message. Now, when I'm doing the wedding message, my outline is typically the same from 1 Corinthians 13, and I do commitment, courtship, and communication is kind of my three little teaching, part of my teaching section of the ceremony. And I'll, of course, use the scripture as the foundation for those 3 points, but then I always use the couple's own words to illustrate that. And so if the bride has said that she most admires about the groom, how hardworking he is, and how he has been driven in his life to give his best, for example, I would use those words to illustrate commitment. So I would say, Susan, when I asked you what you admire the most about Michael, you said this, and I use his word. I use those words. And every time I do that, every time I use their words to illustrate the message, you see them light up, you see them tear up, you see them come to life. And so that's a very important element of what the wedding ministers is about, is we don't just do blah, 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 husband and wife, but we take their story, their personality, their words, and we use them within the wedding ceremony. Let me give you a few other things. Your wedding sermon, the portion of the ceremony that's kind of the wedding message of the sermon, really should be about 5 minutes, maybe 7 minutes. It should be helpful. It should be personal and meaningful. And again, it should be brief. This is not a Sunday morning sermon. This is a wedding ceremony. Incorporate the couple's wishes into the ceremony. If they want a unity candle or a sand ceremony, if they request a certain poem or scripture, make sure to include that. Um, do not include any personal agenda, politics, or controversial topics into anything you say in a wedding. This is not your church. This is not a Sunday morning sermon. This is not the time to talk about gay marriage. This is not the time to talk about politics or about divisive theology or about your interpretation of submission. All of those are hot button issues that do not belong in a wedding ceremony. So, wedding ceremony, yes, we refer to the scripture. Yes, we believe in Jesus. We believe in God. But the focus is on the bride and the groom and not on the minister. So, make sure that you don't put the focus on yourself or on a divisive issue during the wedding ceremony. This is not your time to preach. This is really about the bride and groom. Again, it's not about you, so this is not the time your moment to shine. It's really the bride's time to shine. Give all instructions to the bride and groom out loud during the ceremony. They shouldn't have to remember to do anything. So I will tell the couple, when the time is to turn, face one another, hold hands, look in each other's eyes, and repeat after me. I say that out loud, so they never have to wonder what to do. I tell them when to turn. I tell them what to do with the rings. I mean, I give them all instructions so they are not concerned about trying to remember something. Um, Remember to make eye contact with the bride and groom at times, and not just looking at the audience, but look at them and share with them, not just with the audience. And again, avoid talking about yourself during the ceremony or using yourself as an illustration. Again, it's a wedding ceremony, not a Sunday morning sermon, and so it's just a different feel. And then again, avoid using any pop illustrations, any cultural illustrations, any news references, or personal experience stories. That's great in a sermon. It's not great in a wedding ceremony. It's best to use them and their words as examples, and to use the scripture as examples, or you use poems. But just keep in mind that this is very different than a Sunday morning sermon. If you're not super confident in how to do the actual wedding ceremony, if you've not done a lot and you don't really have your way of doing it, then of course I've provided you with an outline that you can use to go by. And then regardless of whether you've done 1,000 weddings or only 10, listen to the sample wedding ceremony that I've provided, and follow along with the outline that I've provided, and you'll get a sense for what I'm talking about with all this. Then of course any questions you have, let me know. Have fun, and make sure that you make the ceremony personal and meaningful, and that'll go a long way toward making a